Hello and welcome to a new episode of Talking Snooker with Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. Once again, talking about the game we all love.
We are indeed. We're back again and treated to another lovely story from this snooker season that keeps just churning them out. Can't get enough of them.
Brilliant. What a season, Phil. I've just written a couple of days ago that I think it could be snooker's greatest season. And you know this game, and even people that don't know this game, no, you can't really go back into a column and start adding bits. But it's tempting. It's tempting to now add this. And the next story will come soon. We're just blessed. It's amazing. Couple of weeks since Jack Lasowski did what he did in Belfast, we've now got Wu Yize. I mean, that those words, "a star is born," could hardly be more appropriate. He has won, hasn't he, his first ranking event title at the age of 22. We thought it would come. We thought it would come soon, actually, but it feels brilliant because he really is quite a prospect. Already so good, and the way he beat John Higgins, Phil, to win the international championship at 10-6. He was always the likely looking winner, wasn't he, at the final, always ahead. And so much to say, but I'm going to sort of kick off with John Higgins' lovely line from John saying that Wu reminds him of the late, great Paul Hunter. And that's such a good way of saying it. He has obviously the youth, the exuberance. He looks the part, he plays the part. And, he lost those two finals last year. Tiny few nerves at the end. You probably expect that. You think, oh no, is John going to turn the tables with all his experience? But he got the job done. As you say, I was taking a bit of a flyer saying greatest season, but the more these tales add up to it, the more we'll all board the train.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've got to get to the majors, haven't we? And then they'll play a big part in that. But there's a lot to it already this season. There's been so many great stories, and yeah, this is another one. He looked brilliant there in that final. He looked brilliant all week. But that was very impressive stuff in that final. He just looked like he wasn't missing most of the time. It was a bit like Zhao at the World Championship, in terms of as soon as he was in, you thought, "Oh God, this is finished." And most of the time, it was. Yeah, it was very, very impressive. He's so good to watch. Um, Deadly stuff. And Higgins, I don't know, there's a couple of times sort of in the middle of the match where there was that frame where Higgins was quite far ahead and he lost it, and he played this sort of nothingy safety shot where he left one on, but it was a difficult one. It was a bit of a tempter. And he obviously knew what he was doing and he thought he'd risk it, but you can't be doing those things with it with Wu. He pots the lot. Yeah, he was a very deserving winner. And John said that himself, didn't he? He said he did underperform in the final there a bit, but Wu would have beaten most people the way he played, to be fair. He didn't look like you're right, there were the odd bit of nerves maybe, but he didn't look like someone who was about to beat a legend of the game to win their first ranking title. It was very, very impressive. And yeah, it's just exciting to see what's to come because this isn't flash in the pan. We've been expecting big things from him for a while. He's been slowly building towards it. Well, actually, quite quickly building towards it, really. He's only 22. And that was a spectacular way to get over the line. So what's to come now? We'll see. He's going to be in all the big stuff because he's in the top 16 now, and I'd expect him to stay there for a long time to come.
Absolutely right, of course. And what the sport needs, marketable star. It could thrill snooker fans, indeed sports fans, for years and years to come. And talk about the final in a moment, but I noticed you retweeted this. It's a good line, isn't it, from Snooker Info? I think it's a good Twitter feed. Says it's been quite an incredible journey for Wu Yize. He won the IBSF World Under 21 Championship in 2018 at the age of just 14. Became a professional in 2021 via the CBSA Tour. Since then, in only his fifth season, he's now won a ranking event, made over 100 career tons and into the top 16. That's a lovely way of summing it up there. That's a great use of social media, if you know what I mean. Great use of that format. And of course, the 16 means Chris Wakelin will now have to go through qualifying for the UK, won't he? Where Wu goes straight in. That's a little aside there. But on to the final, yeah. Wu was always in charge of it, really. Having said that, it was 5-4 after the first session. Wu rushed into an early 4-1 lead. Higgins battled back, and obviously anyone's at 5-4. But then came the really vital part of the final. And I mean, I really tuned in from that a lot from that point onwards, and absolutely thrilling to the brilliance of Wu. Breaks of 87 and 80, helping him to extend that lead to 8-4. And in fact, the other one of that three he won, he come from miles behind to win it. That was an absolutely brilliant steal, wasn't it? Higgins stopped the rock with the next 8-5 at the interval. You still never know. Wu favourite, of course, but Higgins with his experience far from out of it, especially when the guy needs two. That old cliche, but it's sort of true. Then Wu goes to 9-5. Then those nerves, it was a red with the rest, wasn't it? And I think it was Messrs. Studd and Hallworth in the commentary box, and they were sort of like, well, it, of course you're going to see though. It's the first real sign of it. But I thought it was important for him to get in quickly in the next. He did that break of 108 and sent those fans, didn't he? Didn't he? In Nanjing, sort of wild, and they were absolutely delighted with it. One of those very long ceremonies, but they both spoke so well, actually. There's some words from Wu Yize. He said, honestly, it feels unbelievable. After beating Judd Trump, I started thinking about the whole journey. We'll come to some of those earlier matches in a while. It was surreal. It's been a long wait since reaching the final of the Scottish and the English last year. At times, I honestly felt quite desperate, but deep down, I always believed I had the ability to win the title. Every day, I kept thinking about it. I had a strong will to lift a trophy. That belief carried me through this week. My parents are everything. My dad has been with me since I was a kid, always by my side. He's helped me so much, especially during difficult times in the UK. I'm so grateful for what he's done for me. And also, that reminds me that Higgins also said, I'm delighted his mum and dad are here. John has that great way, doesn't he, of sort of getting to the nuts and bolts of it, I think. And he's very much a family man. And John's a great one for recognising in other families and linking it back to,
Mm.
he said, he brings back memories for himself, he was saying. And it goes to show, John says that the good hand snooker is here. And he said, I'm glad I'll be probably retiring in a couple of years with the guys like that, potting him off the lampshade. He's a total star. I think he means about 22 years, the way the class of 92 are going. The couple have asked me, he said, is that a throwaway line? I think it's a throwaway line. I can't see him going in a couple. But great words from Wu. But interesting, none of that disguising the sort of, I knew it would come. Desperate. Use the word desperate. Wanted to get it. Good sign, eh?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure sure much the more seasoned professionals who haven't achieved as much as Wu has already will find it funny to think him saying, "Oh, it's been a long time since it's been a long time coming." It hasn't because he's been so good so young. But it must feel like a long time because he knows how good he is and he expects to win these things, and now he has. But yeah, superb. I enjoyed those lines. I'd almost forgotten how young he was. He won the under 21s. 14's remarkable. But he had actually, Higgins will have known how good he is for a long time because he played him in this tournament as a wild card when he was only 15, and Higgins only beat him 6-5. So
Mhm.
it's been it has been a long time in some ways. It's been building up. And those centuries as well. That's a remarkable amount of centuries to have made so early in the career. And person I always look at, and this is unfair on Nigel Bond because this is not a criticism of him, but it's just the way the game's changed really. Because Nigel was a pro from 1989 to 2022, and his career century breaks was 128, and Wu Yiz is already on 107.
Wow.
Which is
Yeah.
mental, really, isn't it? And that's no knock on
Yeah.
Nigel. I'm using him as an
No.
example because he's a great player, world
World
finalist,
finalist. Yeah.
ranking event winner. That's a good example of how mad the way things change. Yeah, Wu's a scoring machine, obviously. Um, and yeah, it's just going to be exciting to see what's next for him. At the UK as a seed, that's a huge step up, isn't it? And hopefully there'll be a lot of people who've watched this tournament who will be excited to see him because they should be. He's just thrilling to watch. Obviously, he's still got things to learn on the other side, the non-scoring side of the game, as anyone would at 22. That's to be expected. He's not the perfect player or anything just yet, but well, the stuff he's good at, he's very, very good at.
Yeah. Quite great way of saying it. Yeah, I bet Selby and a few of those old ones wince a bit sometimes when he's a bit the tactical. He just, I mean, potting them off the lampshade is the biggest cliche in the game, but that's kind of what he's like, and he just looks brilliant. I remember thinking it in Brentwood when I was there earlier this season, thinking I think he might have lost that night, but I was thinking, oh God, this guy's just so good to watch, and just everything about him. He's just, yeah, a real, I say that marketable star thing, but again, you have to keep coming back to that. And great mention of Nigel Bond, of course, the first world final I saw live. I always think Darley Dale. I always remember he had a great amount of fans there for that final 30 years ago, and always great memories. He was ranking event winner as well. Nigel's a really good guy at the game. Well, Phil, we were on air, weren't we, during the tournament? In fact, we were when Zach Surtees got his 147. So we were coming round to the last 16 stage. So let's maybe carry on from that point onwards and talk about some of the stories from there. Well, it's a good round, interesting round actually. Xiao Tong, who had a very good week, didn't he? We've been talking about when's the world champion going to come to the fore. Well, we saw a lot of that from him. He beat Si He 6-1. Mark Selby had a thumping win against Anthony McGill 6-1. Well, Wu Yize a six Judd Trump four is absolutely barking mad. I mean, you could write a book on the match. 4-0 to Trump. And then he only scored 18 points from the last six frames. I mean, intervals change matches has never been more appropriate, Phil. Wu with breaks of 62, 109, 88, 92, 86, and 80. And also to say, we'll come to his 6-0 win in the round after. He didn't have a break less than 62, did he, in any of the frames? It was absolutely amazing. 12 in a row. Quite something that. And then Barry Hawkins, well, he beat Jack Lazowski 6-4. That was a hell of a match. Jack made three centuries in a row and then a 71 to come from 4-0 to 4-4. Then Hawkins won two more frames for victory. Sean Murphy beat Ding Junhui, battle of real heavyweights there, 6-2. Two centuries and three half centuries from Sean. What a win for Zach Surtees, Phil. The aforementioned. He beat Neil Robertson 6-3, six half centuries from Surtees. Really good scoring there. He's, sort of coming of age. He's obviously that bit older, but he's, really looking the part more and more. Stephen Maguire's having a very decent season, beat Jiang Jun 6-4, and John Higgins beat Scott Donaldson 6-4. So maybe a word for me on that round. I mean, did you watch what you said, Judge Trump, by the way? I've not put you on the
Yeah.
spot. I didn't. I mean, that's just like, take me through your thought process when you were watching that then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I turned it on. I didn't watch it right from the start. But at 4-0, I thought Judd was obviously doing all right. He was 4-0 up, but he sort of was playing as he has been for a while, which he's not looked on his A game other than little flashes. But, Judd Trump not on his A game, still capable of making half centuries and stuff. So it wasn't like he was blowing him away. Wu was quite poor in those first four frames, really. But then, yeah, somewhere out of nowhere, it all clicked in and Judd was just blown away by him. And he did a couple of things wrong as well. I mean, Wu was unstoppable, but there was a shot in the last frame where, when at that point Wu had won five on the spin to go ahead, and then Judd took on a long one and missed it by a mile, and just then that was the end of the game. We just let Wu in again. So yeah, Judd. Um, I mean, he said I can't remember after which match it was in Belfast, but he'd won. It was a game he'd won, and I think Rachel Casey asked him how close he is back to his best, and he said it's like 99% away from it, which is an exaggeration, but it sort of illustrates how far away he thinks he is. And even though he's winning a lot of games because he's Judd Trump, he's the world number one. He is some stretch
Mm.
from his best. So yeah, even at 4-0, that it felt like that as well. But yeah, then Wu just was unbelievable. And we sort of knew he could do that, and that's why what happened after that is so special because winning six frames on the spin is immense stuff, but it's not that surprising he could do it in one match. But the fact he followed it up then with a load more similar stuff, that's what's really exciting, isn't it? Because it's all about the consistency. Um, but there was load. The way the tournament came together, the draw was superb. Every round was great, wasn't it? But yeah, that I watched a lot of Zach beating Neil, and he was very, very impressive there. It's not been a sort of linear progress since that brilliant end of last season. This season's been a bit up and down, but the results are coming more regularly. And he said that was his best ever win, which it may well have been. I dug out some quotes that he gave me a couple of years ago from because he'd practiced a lot with Neil, and this was before he sort of got on this surge up the rankings a bit. And he just said how inferior Neil made him feel on the practice table. It was just like felt like a little boy just going to play with against a man. So that will have meant a lot to beat him on a big stage for the first time, and hopefully it'll give the ever-growing confidence an even bigger boost.
Yeah, yeah, a good way of summing it up. And actually, Neil, I spoke to myself a few days ago, and we'll come to that. Thinks a tremendous amount of Zach. He really does. In as a man and as a player, actually. And he says what I think he sort of suggests what we all say about Zach was he's one of the most genuine characters. A lot of people are genuine in this sport, but he is one of the most genuine guys you'd ever wish to meet. So you're right to say how much that would have meant to him. Quarterfinals, Xiao Tong at 6, Mark Selby at 5. Very good match, obviously. Breaker 63 in the decider to win it for Xiao. But then that Wu Yize 6, Barry Hawkins nil. I thought when I saw Barry in the last 8, he was going to do it because I just had a bit of a ticked him off. Like I thought he was going to win it, and I would have enjoyed the humble pie. But then more good breaks are crazy from Wu at 66, 64, 73, 85, 111, and 86. It was Zach Shirty losing in that round. He lost to 6-1 to Stephen Maguire. And I said, Maguire's been doing pretty well. Good season he's putting together. John Higgins, 6, Sean Murphy, 2. 2 centuries and 2 half centuries from Higgins in that one. And then on to the semis, Wu Yize at 9, Xiao Xintong 6. That felt like a real heavyweight sort of clash. I mean, Wu's not won the tournament, but it still felt like that real sort of high stakes match, obviously in China. Wu with an early 140 in that match and sort of kept it peppered throughout the match with sort of decent scoring, really. And that was a very, very good win. And the other one was one-sided, total non-contest. John Higgins 9, Stephen Maguire 2. They're obviously great mates, and John just got the job done there. 137 from Higgins was a really big break from him in that one. And obviously we're left with the final, as we were talking about. Famous win for Wu Yize beating John Higgins 10-6. So yeah, maybe a word about those latter stages from you, Phil. We saw some matches that weren't particularly close, actually. There's one that notably was Shower and Mark Selby, but as you said, that phrase, it all came together so nicely. Loads of sort of drama, and it all comes down to that irrepressible winner, the brilliant Wu Yize.
Yeah, and his semi-final was a fantastic win as well because obviously Zhao's been struggling a little bit, well, certainly struggling for results. Um, and that was a huge game for the pair of them there. But I thought when he got to that stage, he's only ever well, he seems like the kind of player that could be back at any moment. He's only a bit of inspiration, but um, Wu was fair and square winner there, the better player. And obviously Higgins was in that one-sided one against Maguire. I think I'd forgotten. I must have known this really that the double session semi-final. That's a nice treat, isn't it? I mean, this is a great tournament.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a plus of this, one of the many pluses of this great event. Um, but yeah, I mean, tough. You don't get. I don't know. He would be struggling to get an easy run through one of these 1-8 fields, really. But we had a tough one there because even before he played Judd, he had Zhang Anda, no pushover.
Mm-hmm.
So then to whitewash
Mm-hmm.
Hawkins, then blade the world champion, then Higgins in the final. Some way to win your first ranking event. Very, very impressive. And yeah, it's sort of we haven't mentioned it yet, but we've continued the new winner of an event
Yeah.
throughout the season so far. But it's
Amazing.
interesting because there do seem to be certain players in good form, like Maguire, like you said, he seems to be in good nick. Murphy seems to be as reliable as anyone at the minute. He seems to be
Yeah.
in the business end of everything. So it's not like it doesn't feel like a completely random season. But when it comes to the winners, um, it's been completely up in the air.
It has, and as you pointed out a couple of times, this is what we said a lot over the years now, on here and elsewhere. There are so many bankable stars in this sport. We are spoiled. There are lots of big names and tremendous players that haven't won yet. So this trend, there's no reason. I messaged you earlier. I said, is it because I was writing a story about it? Is it 9? It is 9, isn't it? And of course, because one of them is, a lot of people going with the 8 ranking, but you add on Shanghai, that's 9. Even I know 8.1 is 9, Phil. And then was there 3 at the end of last season? So a dozen now, is it? I mean, it's just, yeah, brilliant stuff. And as you say, as we say, no reason why that can't continue. And I know what you mean about the semis. And I can't remember whether it was last season or season before. I was writing about, you know, the, what would I think bring gravitas back to the UK Championship. It definitely would. I mean, you just can look at it. I mean, I think you mentioned last time how some people say this is now a bit like the UK. Well, I mean, I'm not saying they can do it. people will come to me for loads of reasons why they can't, and there'll be very good reasons. But if they ever could get the two sessions back to the UK for the semis, it would have a terrific amount of gravitas. I suggested once, to quite a bit of tumbleweed and quite a bit of opposition, do them together. I used to grow up with things like that. I always remember the big county cricket, bit of a tangent, the old semis. I used to love that, the old Nat West, the old Gillette games going back to back. That had a certain cachet. People say we've never done that in snooker. Well, we can't do it in the future because we've never done it. I mean, look, the players probably want their attention, their moment. That probably works better in snooker. I get that, but look, I think that if you can get those semis longer, it would be a good thing. Great tournament anyway. The UK, of course, coming up, but yeah, as you say, it is easy to forget because there's so many tournaments now. They are all a little bit different, and sometimes it's easy to say, oh, because we're so used to the sort of general first to 11 now, isn't it? Semis, best of 11. So yeah, something a bit different always feels nice. Well, Phil, we're not aiming for a long one at all, and we'll do a little bit more on the tournament to come, and then onto the champion and other matters. But we should maybe give a name check now and say you are listening to the Talking Snooker podcast with Phil Haigh and Nick Metcalf. A famous victory for Wu Yize. He has won the international championship. A brilliant victory for the 22-year-old, beating John Higgins in the final. Now, Phil, I was definitely getting quite a few messages throughout the tournament on pockets, which we have been saying have, in my opinion, been good this season. Pretty very good, actually. And that's backed up by Neil Robertson, who did say, however, to me, this is for my radio snooker service, that they were disappointing. He says they were very disappointing, actually, at this event. Let me give you a bit of full context. I say all this is available on my radio snooker. Neil said to me, so Shanghai and Xi'an, I wasn't in Wuhan, but Mark Williams says Wuhan pockets are really tight. The other players said the pockets there were good. So that fell in line with Xi'an and Shanghai, which I was in, and the pockets there were good for scoring, but you certainly couldn't take liberties. But this one, for some reason, they were like last year, so very disappointing. Even when the balls are missed, they still go in. It's very disappointing that we have one of the events in China with such big pockets. It's obviously good if you're winning matches and making a lot of big breaks. You can get in and score really heavily. But I think all the players would prefer them to be tighter for sure. So I think there was just an error in terms of the table fitting with the tables. Like something happened, they just cut them wrong. Plenty of feedback has gone through, and it's something to get sorted for the next China event to make sure they fall in line with how they were in Shanghai, Xi'an and Wuhan. I think overall this season they've been very good. Around the UK they've been great. In China this season so far they've been very good. It's just this one was a bit of a slip up. Overall we're making progress. I think they'll learn from this and get it fixed for whenever the next one is. And of course Neil had said before that interview with me that he's on the players board, and that's one of the first things he wanted to address on there. WST responded as well, got some words from them. They say, we are glad that Neil shares our view that overall the pockets have been very good this season. Our dedicated team of table fitters worked tirelessly in delivering the best possible conditions in very difficult circumstances. We've been pushing players for feedback during events for the past 2 years, and the more feedback we get, the better. We are seeing feedback lead to changes in conditions in events in China, and we've made changes to the event in Germany that come straight from player feedback. I mean, they were noticeably different on this event, I think. Just certain things like, I know you mentioned this before, as have other pundits, players will take on different shots in weeks like this. I think we even saw it in the final. A couple of really good shots still on the cushion. Oh, he's nailed a really good one. Yeah, he has nailed a good one, but on a very generous table. So you kind of play shots differently. Look, overall, they've been very good. There's part of me that thinks, well, can't we just reach for the stars and make all of them every good? I don't mean the nuance where things are slightly funny because of the weather. I mean when it's kind of obvious all week, and you have to sort of, I don't know, you have to ask other people. You have to have some kind of reason not to say they're bad. I don't know that. Seen us defending the game. I get it from former players, journalists. I'm surprised about when I do hear that. But for me, they were generous. Neil Robertson says so, and I'm glad he did because I think that you want players to be honest, and a lot of fans, mentioned this to me, I thought, well, let's go to someone that's played in it. I haven't got a clue. I mean, really, you can see on television, but that's from the horse's mouth. Neil says, one of the most honest guys, most genuine guys in the game. He thought this week, one reason or another, they just didn't get them quite right.
Yeah, and I think that the players are the ones that know, obviously. And I think because earlier in the season, when we talked about the 147s, a lot of players have been saying that they haven't felt they've been big this season. And people will sort of say, well, they would say that. But I think the players in general are pretty honest with this stuff. It was interesting that you mentioned Mark Williams there because he was the one 2 or 3 years ago that was saying more than anyone that the pockets are getting bigger and bigger. So for him to say they're smaller, um, I'm sure he's telling the truth as he sees it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you can see. Certainly, we mentioned it last time, didn't we? Coming off Belfast, where they seemed particularly tight, then then the games looked very different from the start. You don't even have to watch the games really. You just see the score sheets and all the tons. But when you do watch the games, clearly it's a different setup. Um, there was one of those shots you sort of mentioned there was in the final. That was a frame that Wu sort of pinched from behind, where the final green was a really difficult one along the bolt cushion, and it looks an absolutely immense shot, and it is. But could he have done that on that table in Northern Ireland? It would have been a lot harder, to the point where he may not have even tried to do it. Actually, he probably would have just played safe on those at the table. So it does change the game. Um, and yeah, I mean you can't just guess things. We I didn't see many shots that I thought I'd missed and went in. That's when it's really jarring, isn't it? I didn't see too much of that, but yeah, I certainly take Neil's word for that. Though he's been um, he made this point before about how he since joining the players board I think as he put it, banged his fist on the table about the conditions in China, and he's been pleased with the improvements, but it seemed like a setback on that front. But as he says, hopefully they'll learn from it and improve it next time.
What was your general feeling on the tournament? I mean, it's great drama. Watching from afar, the crowds weren't always amazing, and I know people sort of say, "Well, you always, on certain events, and obviously Saudi will come to mind, but you don't mention it on others. They weren't always great. They were good at times, for sure. But it's everything I heard, suggested it was well staged, and I say just great stories throughout. Snooker over cornflakes, as you mentioned, and yeah, I mean, just as I said, the different winners thing is kind of amazing, really, and that's a good line. I say about recently, 147s aren't becoming as newsworthy, which is true. Unfortunately, they're not, but other things can come in. Need somebody to fill
Mm.
the space. People loved it. I said it, seen it on the cover of Desk Work, and they love it. I mean, a lot of sports couldn't do that. Different winner every time. It's I have to say, long may it last.
Yeah, I had a little flick back through recent seasons, and I thought I'd have to go a long, long way back to see something similar, but it's not quite as long. But 21, 22
Oh, right.
counted. It got 8 tournaments in where they were all different
Well,
winners
this has
then.
beaten it.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, but that's pretty long. But it
Yeah,
was
it
a
is.
very different season, so that was just COVID-y times, and there were no China events then. So the first repeat winner of that season was Neil Robertson at the Masters, but we had to get that far
Oh,
to get 8 tournaments in. That's
well,
so
that
quite
shows that
different.
shows how much we gain with tournaments.
Yeah,
That's a great gauge.
exactly. Yeah, but yeah, that run there: Gilbert, Williams, Allen, Robertson, Trump, Zhao, Purcell, Ronnie, and then Neil won the Masters to make it his second of the season. So we did have a similar run there, but in very, very different circumstances.
Cool. So that was Shout winning the UK, and then Luca winning the week after. Yeah, I remember all that very well. Didn't seem like that long ago, but yeah, no, good.
What was quite different about that though, and I think what makes this season all the more remarkable is we've only had one repeat finalist.
Yeah.
Sean Murphy's won one and lost one final, but other than that, 17 out of 18 finalists are different. Whereas that season where we had a number of different winners, Higgins was in 4 of those finals and didn't win any of them. Luca had got to the
Wow.
UK final and then won the Scottish. I think Allen had been in a final and then won Northern Ireland. So that was very different. I think the amount of completely different finalists this time is is really mad.
Wow. Was he in four, John? Well, it's certainly so. I'm going to plump for maybe it was only two out of the four he had big leads. It could have been three out of four, but I think it was two out of four. So no wonder he was a broken man. I mean, I'd forgotten it was four the first half of the
Yeah, because
season. Wow.
yeah, the Northern Ireland and English were the tight ones, so he was ahead. Then he lost comfortably to Judd in the Championship of Champions, and then to Luca in Scotland.
Oh, he's in the Scottish final. So he was. We could go down
Although that
memory
was in
lane.
Wales, I say Scotland, the Scottish
Oh,
in London
Scottish
now.
in Wales. Oh, of course it was.
At
Yeah.
times.
That wasn't even COVID reasons, was it? That was the gambling thing. Yeah. Couldn't have the, yeah, that was absolutely mad. Yeah, I liked all that. I mean, I was at the York for that one. That was when we heard the words "A Star Is Born." Yeah, Luca played some great snooker that weekend, but Channel played better. Phil, let's move on. Let's go on to the Champion of Champions. Alan McManus has added quite a lot to the snooker lexicon, but nothing better for me than the winter swing. I love that phrase. It started once more, hasn't it? Getting underway. Tomorrow, as we speak, Monday. Let me give you the schedule. We know it now. We couldn't know it until only very very recently. In fact, last time we were on air, we didn't know it. We do now. So coming up then, the play on Monday. It's Judd Trump against Bayou Lu, Sean Murphy against Lei Pei Fan. On Tuesday, it's Kyron Warson against Jack Lazowski and Mark Allen, Xiaoxing Tong. On Wednesday, it's Mark Williams against Alfie Burden and Mark Selby, Stephen Maguire. On Thursday, it's Neil Robertson against Tom Ford and John Higgins against Xiao Guodong. Maybe have a sort of bit of a word, about each day. I mean, obviously, hell of a test for Bayou Lu, but very interesting to see how she gets on for sure. And she's a wonderful player. You wouldn't be remotely surprised if she gave Judd a sort of troublesome afternoon. Sean Murphy, Lei Pei Fan. Well, actually, you say Sean's in great form, but interesting, Lei beat Sean the last time they played back at the Scottish Open last year. And maybe I'll let you have a word about that, and then you can wax lyrical about Kyron and Jack, who played a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, yeah. Well, those first games in the group stages are best of sevens. So, if you can get shocks, then that's the sort of format to do it over. Um, and it would be great to see give Trump a run for his money there. She's certainly capable, of course. Um, and yeah, Murphy against Lay. Yeah, again, Murphy's the favourite, isn't he? But Lay very unpredictable. I was trying to remember who was the youngest first time winner before Wu, and of course Lay was only 21 when he won the Scottish last season. Different sort of trajectory to Wu. That did seem a lot more out of the blue. But he's shown he can do things since then. Knocking Kyron out of Sheffield, very very good. And talking to Kyron, yeah, I mean Lisowski is in better form. So we'll see. Best of seven, that's a tough one to predict. And Mark Allen against Zhao Xintong is a lovely one.
Oh, what
That,
an
that,
afternoon! Those two.
yeah, yeah, that's superb. Yeah, two tricky games to call there. Tough to pick your group final there. But Zhao, yeah, good signs that he's coming back to form. It was it's been a remarkably quiet time for him since Sheffield. He's had some illness. His life's completely changed. But a huge test with Alan there over seven frames. So we'll see. And then on to Wednesday, yeah, the seniors champion in as a lot of people were pleased to see, I think.
Very much so. Now, I took a lot of snooker nuggets from that, but I also took that I can't believe you said different sort of trajectory with such aplomb. Do it again. That's a hard thing to say. Go on.
Different sort of trajectory.
Maybe it's not as hard then. I thought that was an interesting selection of words together there. I like that. Now, you're right, Phil. Alfie Burden against Mark Williams. Yeah, first met at the Welsh Open a quarter of a century ago. So, I mean, obviously, Mark will start as a considerable favourite. But as you say, short format, this is the time. And we've seen it over the years, actually. Players have, the favourite player has often been sometimes turned over, but certainly given scares in this tournament. Well, we'll see if that happens also with Selby Maguire. Selby will be favourite, but not that heavy a favourite, you wouldn't think. Maybe the way Maguire's playing. They first met at the British Open 22 years ago. And a repeat of the Welsh Open, which when I saw it, I thought, oh yeah, of course. But it didn't come to my mind straight away in February, which of course Mark won that 9-6 to claim the title. And yeah, maybe I'll leave you with Thursday, Robertson and Ford, and Higgins and Zhao Gudong. The great treats keep coming.
Yeah, the John Higgins Zhao Gudong rivalry that has
Yeah.
been going. They just keep seem to be playing each other every other tournament. Not quite as regularly as that, but in big ones as well. They played three times. Was it? Yeah, three because they played at the Players of the Tour and then the Worlds at the end of last season, and then they played at the Shanghai at the start of this season. So they know each other very well over big tournaments, long matches. This one not so long, but yeah, it might be tough. I mean, he's got till Thursday, so it's not a completely rapid turnaround, but um, not ideal preparation really flying back at that point from China for John. We'll see how he gets on. And then Tom Ford, yeah, it's one of these where you think the champions are all such big names, and it's obvious what they've won quite recently. And then, I mean, it is obvious what Tom won because it's the shootout, but it feels a long time ago, that doesn't it? And
Mm.
his form's been a bit up and down since that. I mean, he had a good run in Northern Ireland, and he was in the quarterfinals, only narrowly lost to Joey Long there. Um, Lost to Daniel Wells in his opener in Nanjing last week. So Robertson will obviously be clear favourite there, but you can't get too carried away. As I say, best of sevens, Tom Ford can beat anyone over that distance.
Absolutely, and you're right because that was one of those that was late 24, wasn't it? It would have been just before Christmas. So yeah, it does feel like. Um, what happened in that? I did a commentary on Radio Snooker. What happened in that final that makes me think it was a funny final, or
It
maybe it
was
was the
Liam
semi?
Graham, wasn't it? And he had a great chance to win it. The distant underdog.
Oh, that's right. Of course it was.
Very
Yeah,
emotional
absolutely.
scenes afterwards.
That's right. Well, absolutely right, Phil. Well remembered as ever from you. So the Mattione Arena in Leicester will be the host of the tournament. We'll see it live on ITV. And we'll be seeing the tournament live on ITV, Phil, until 2028. Now, of course, if you listen to Radio Snooker, I was suggesting in June, wasn't I, that we'd heard nothing to the contrary. I saw no reason why the tournament might not stay on ITV. And I said, don't be surprised if you see snooker on the schedules beyond this year. We are going to see that. And do you know what? In a bigger picture sense, this is a bit nerdy, isn't it? I'll say this as another maybe radio snooker again, actually about general snooker matters recently. When the Channel 5 or ITV show the tournament is a little bit, the sort of certainly a Brit focusing and a bit sort of telly nerdy. The fact is, they are on television and pretty mainstream that. But I just want to extend it a bit. I can't think of many sports that would have a big presence like it does on the BBC. One tournament on ITV, but a big one. And of course, another main free-to-air broadcaster in Channel 5 covering other events as well. And that's before we get to TNT Sports, Discovery Plus, and all the other places. That's just in the UK. So I know we're bound to talk the game up on a snooker podcast, of course, but it's good, isn't it? All these channels want a bit of snooker. They must like what they see. I sound like Barry Hearn now. They like what they see. They want a bit of it. They want some of those. I'm being flippant. They want some of those funeral adverts, but it's good stuff, isn't it? Because we know about the ITV team. BBC and Channel 5 cover the game. We've seen it Channel 5 with the seniors. I'm sure Channel 5 have no reason to think they won't do a great job themselves. But it's interesting. I had a feeling it would happen. We've seen confirmation that the tournament will carry on ITV into the future.
Yeah, no, it's good news. I think everyone thinks they do a great job. I certainly do. And yeah, it's nice to have a mix. And Craig said that we know how they'll do it with a studio, um, other interesting interviews knocking around, when they cover tournaments. So yeah, that's got to be a plus. Looking forward to how Channel 5 do it. Yeah, think they'll be doing things a bit differently, which should be interesting. Um, so we'll wait and see. But yeah, no, that's good news. ITV is still in the game.
In general terms, of course, I mean, I know I say the winter swing, but it's just absolutely, you know, tantalising. I've just been writing some snooker copy for and stories for TNT Sports today, and just what we got coming up. Obviously, the UK Championship and how special that's going to be. Qualifying is a couple of weeks away from that now. Now, Phil, the main stage is 3 weeks away, and of course now the champion of champions. Our cup really runneth over. It's big stars all the time, isn't it? And I say, on the television throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening. I know we can quibble about this, that, and the other, and snooker fans will, but there's an awful lot of hours of snooker. We'll have some square eyes in the days to come, won't we? And I love it when today's good, tomorrow's good. Look what's coming up Wednesday. It's that sort of tournament, isn't it? A little bit like the Masters, not quite as high level as the Masters actually, but still very, very special to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, it almost. I mean, this is unfair, but it's almost too much at this time of the year because I know certainly after the UK, then the shootout is a whole different thing, and but then certainly by the time the Scottish Open, I'm sure that struggles for um sort of eyeballs to an extent, but just because we've had so much, haven't we? And then you sort of turn your attention to the Masters, and then a tournament just before Christmas. Um, Still a good event, don't get me wrong, but there's just so much big stuff that anything that slips below the sort of level of the other things then can get lost a bit. But that is a real first world problem. It's rather have too much snooker than too little. So yeah, plenty to come, plenty of good stuff.
We're going to shoot off, aren't we? Just a bit of any other business. My new Sporting Life column I've mentioned, available to read now, asks if this could be snooker's greatest season. The maximums, the great finals, the stories. Lazowski, my goodness, one of the great stories of this or any snooker season. I mean, I wrote it before, Wu Yize. Now this adds to it. God knows what we've got coming up in the weeks to come. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm also really pleased to say that Carty Hartinger has joined me. I think a compelling snooker voice. She's been talking for years to her German speaking audience on total clearance for Christian Omaker. And now she's joined me on Radio Snooker for a second time to talk about the WST Steve Dawson interview. And I mentioned on there, we're not Woodward and Bernstein. Steve Dawson's not on trial, but it was good to, address some of those issues. And, I really enjoyed doing that. So if you'd like to tune in, that's available across all the usual sort of formats, including Spotify and Apple as well. So that's there for you. Back to you, Phil. You no doubt will be eyes glued to Leicester and typing up some interesting quotes from the victors and maybe some of the losers as well, because we tend to hear from those on ITV as well in the days to come.
Yeah, no, that is a plus when that happens. Yeah, yeah. May even pop down. We'll see. But yeah, no, I listened to that chat you had with Carty in the car the other day, and that was brilliant. Would highly recommend that. Um, yeah, no, it's just so I think you mentioned on there with her actually when there's almost no time to do sort of interviews and stuff at this time of the year because it's just solid snooker. So it's lots of lots of reporting action. But yeah, looking forward to it. Great tournament. Seen some pictures from the Matchroom guys have posted today. The arena. They always have their own little twist on things, don't they? And it does look very good. So we'll see. I'm not sure what shirts they've gotten this year, but we'll look forward to that too. But yeah, should be a good week.
Those first ones looked like the wettest shirt. They weren't wet. They just looked
Yeah,
very
yeah.
wet, didn't they? They looked like I'm a bit unfortunate, but as you say, this is the event for innovation. I think is the way to say it, isn't it? And they'll try different things for sure. What else can I say? Well, lots of sporting matters. Of course, I enjoyed covering Tottenham v Manchester United yesterday, and that's coverage of that available across all my social media feeds. And our fifth birthday, Phil. Now just a week away. Last chance to get your messages in. We've had some lovely wins in. Really appreciate it. Uh, Tweet us, please, at Talking Snooker, or to indeed to Phil or myself on Twitter, or email talkingsnooker@yahoo.com. And the next time we gather, we will be talking about 5 years. We're not going to do that mad thing. We suggested one day totting up the minutes. That would actually be frightening. I don't know what I'd do. You sort of think there's a bit of like, oh, well done, mate. We've done really well, but it's also a little bit like that's a bit worrying. I just don't. We shouldn't do that.
Um, That makes me think of when I used to play a lot of Football Manager as a kid or slash at uni, and that would tell you the hours you spent on there, and some of it was a bit like a bit proud, but more sort of embarrassing how many hours you spent playing that game. So yeah, probably rather not know. Yeah, I would just give one shout out to the city of Glasgow where I spent a couple of days over the weekend, which you may hear in my slightly gravelly voice as a result, but that's because I had a great time. Went to a snooker pool place called Reardon's, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, but yeah, never been to Glasgow before, and it is great.
It's a great city. I was quite rude to you, wasn't I? Before we came in, I said you've got a bit of a drinking weekend voice on you there. Don't think you was
It's very accurate.
you didn't take that kindly to it actually, but yeah, I think yeah, I can see and hear you had a brilliant time, so that's great to see and hear. Phil, we're going to shoot off. Maybe just finish on Wu Yize. That's where we started. I mean, what can this guy do in the game? The bottom line is an awful lot. They talk about that thing about the hardest one going from 0 to 1. He's done that. Won't be as hard getting from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3. It could well happen soon. Could well happen this season. Wouldn't it be a story if he's the one to do the multiple in this in this
Yeah.
season of everyone being different winners so far? But he's just yeah, wonderful player to watch, just thrilling around the table, and we just can't wait for what he might do in the years to come, eh?
Yeah. I don't want to be pinning down any predictions at this stage, but yeah, I'd be surprised if he didn't win plenty more things. He's got to those two home nations finals. Those kind of tournaments seem to suit him well. You wouldn't be surprised if someone who wins the shootout. Anything really could be in his future. So yeah, I'm just very much looking forward to seeing it because he's a delight to watch.
He really is, and you're quite right. Really, let's let them enjoy a little bit like Jack. Not too much. What are they going to do? Let's let them enjoy this one first. I'm sure Williams will be doing just that with his family. That wonderful win for him. He is the winner of the international championship. Enjoy the champion of champions, folks. What a great tournament it's going to be. We'll see you next time. We will be toasting our fifth birthday. But for now, I salute you, Phil, and say glad you had a good time in Glasgow, sir, and see you next time.
Yeah, pleasure as always. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Speak to you very soon.
Keep your thoughts coming to us. Tweet us at Talking Snooker or email talkingsnooker@yahoo.com. But from now, from your old friends, Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf, cheerio.